Level 1. Imagine this. Every morning, you drive to work in a 10-year-old Toyota. All around you, people are driving Teslas, BMWs, and Mercedes. Your clothes are simple. You bring lunch from home. And you rarely eat at expensive restaurants. At the office, people look at you and quietly assume, this guy probably doesn't have much money. But they don't know one thing. The man they think is struggling financially has more than $1.2 million sitting in his investment accounts. And here's the crazy part. He could buy a brand new luxury car. He could buy a bigger house. He could completely change his lifestyle, but he doesn't. Why? Because Daniel understood something that most people don't understand until it's too late. And by the end of this story, you might look at the way you spend money completely differently. Daniel was 41 years old. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a famous entrepreneur. And he didn't own some viral business. He was simply a normal American professional who had worked at the same company for several years. His annual salary was around $82,000. His house was comfortable, but it wasn't a mansion. His car was old. His clothes weren't covered in designer logos. And if you looked at his lifestyle, you would never guess that he was a millionaire. Every morning around 8:15, Daniel's old Toyota would pull into the office parking lot. Some coworkers would stand around their cars, talking. One had a new BMW. Another had recently bought a Tesla. Someone else had just purchased an expensive pickup truck. Daniel would park his Toyota, lock the doors, and quietly walk into the office. One morning, his coworker Mike looked at the car and laughed. "Daniel, seriously?" Daniel looked at him. "What?" Mike smiled. "You've had that thing forever." Daniel laughed. "Yeah, it still works." Mike shook his head. "You make decent money, man. Buy something better." Daniel simply smiled. "Maybe someday." Mike assumed Daniel couldn't afford it. But the truth was completely different. Daniel could afford it. He could afford a lot more than Mike realized. He just didn't believe he needed to buy everything he could afford. And that was one of the biggest financial decisions he had ever made. Daniel had one financial habit that was incredibly boring. Every month, the moment his paycheck arrived, he paid his future first. An automatic investment transfer was already set up. Salary came in, money automatically went into his investment accounts. Then came the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and everything else. There was no secret stock tip, no overnight business, no magic strategy, just consistency, month after month, year after year. Daniel never allowed his lifestyle to rise as quickly as his income. When his salary increased, he didn't immediately buy an expensive car. When he received a bonus, he didn't buy a luxury watch. When his coworkers started buying bigger houses, he stayed in the same home. And slowly, almost silently, that decision started working in his favor. One Saturday morning, Daniel was sitting at his kitchen table. He opened his laptop, logged into his investment account, and saw a number on the screen. $1,203,847. Daniel stared at the screen for a few seconds. He didn't celebrate. He didn't take a picture. He didn't post it on social media. He simply leaned back in his chair and smiled. Because that number meant more than money. It meant freedom. If his paycheck stopped next month, his life wouldn't immediately fall apart. If his company fired him, he wouldn't have to accept the first job he could find. If an emergency happened, he had options. And maybe that's the real power of wealth. Money doesn't just buy things, it buys options. But Daniel's story was about to become much more interesting because only a few months later, his company would begin laying people off. Monday morning, the atmosphere in the office felt different. People were whispering. Managers were having meetings. Nobody knew exactly what was happening. Then the email arrived. The company was restructuring, and several positions were going to disappear. First, one coworker lost his job. Then another. Then another. Suddenly, the same people who had spent the previous few months talking about new cars and expensive vacations were sitting down and calculating their finances. One afternoon, Mike came to Daniel. He looked worried. Man, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Daniel looked at him. What happened? Mike lowered his voice. I think I'm next. Daniel paused, then asked, Do you have an emergency fund? Mike was silent for a few seconds. Maybe. 1 month. Daniel nodded. Mike's brand new luxury SUV was sitting outside in the parking lot. The monthly payment was huge. Then there was the mortgage, the credit card bills, and now the fear of losing his paycheck. Mike quietly said, I thought I was doing everything right. Daniel didn't have an easy answer because from the outside, Mike looked successful. But underneath that lifestyle, his financial freedom was incredibly fragile. A few weeks later, Daniel was called into a meeting. His manager looked at him. Daniel, unfortunately, he didn't need to hear the rest. His position was being eliminated too. Daniel walked out of the meeting. People around the office looked at him. Some probably thought, now Daniel is in trouble, but they didn't know what Daniel knew. That night he drove his old Toyota home, parked it in the driveway, walked inside, opened his laptop, and looked at his accounts. Then he said to himself, I don't have to rush. It was a simple sentence, but for Daniel, it meant everything. He didn't need to take the first job that came along. He could take a few months off. He could learn new skills. He could search for a less stressful job. Or he could build something of his own, because years earlier, he had made one simple decision. He chose to become financially free in the future, instead of looking impressive today. Daniel thought things would become easier after that, but something had changed. Now he had time, and with time came questions. One evening, his wife asked him, Aren't you scared? Daniel thought for a moment. A little. She looked at him. Then how are you so calm? Daniel paused, then said, Because we prepared for this before we knew it was coming. And maybe that's one of the most underrated benefits of financial planning. You can't predict the future. You don't know when a recession will come. You don't know when your job will disappear. You don't know when an emergency will happen. You don't know when a business will fail. You don't even know when the market will crash. But you can control one thing. You can make sure your future self isn't left financially helpless. A few months later, Daniel found a new job. The salary was slightly lower, but the job was more flexible. And Daniel was happier. And his Toyota? Still the same old Toyota. One day, a new coworker walked with him into the parking lot. He looked at the car. Is this yours? Daniel smiled. Yeah. The coworker laughed. Man, I thought you were broke. Daniel laughed too. Then he said, I'm not broke. The coworker looked confused. Then why do you drive this? Daniel looked at his Toyota, then said, Because I don't need the car to prove I'm doing well. The coworker didn't say anything, because Daniel had just said something that many people know deep down, but don't want to admit. Looking rich and being rich are two completely different things. The problem isn't that someone buys a BMW. The problem isn't that someone buys a bigger house. The problem is when people start measuring their financial success by things other people can see. A new car, expensive clothes, luxury vacations, a huge house, the latest phone. But most of these things don't increase your wealth. Sometimes they simply increase your monthly obligations. And slowly, a dangerous cycle begins. Your income goes up. Your lifestyle goes up. So you need even more income. Then your lifestyle goes up again. And one day, you realize something terrifying. I earn more money than ever, but I still can't stop working. That's the trap. You make more money, but your freedom doesn't increase. Daniel understood one simple distinction. Looking rich is different from being wealthy. To look rich, you need to buy things. To become wealthy, you need to own things. To look rich, you need an expensive car. To become wealthy, You need assets. To look rich, you need a bigger house. To become wealthy, you need a financial system that can keep working, even when you're not. And most importantly, a rich-looking person asks, "Can I afford this?" A wealthy person asks, "Do I actually need this?" Those questions sound similar. 1 year later, Daniel drove past his old office. He looked at the parking lot. There were new cars everywhere. Some people were still working there. Some had been promoted, some had left. Some had completely changed their cars. But Daniel? He was still driving his Toyota. The difference was, now he knew he didn't have to prove anything to anyone. He didn't own a massive mansion. He didn't have a private jet. He didn't post a luxury lifestyle on social media. But he had something you can't see in a thumbnail: control over his time. He could decide where to work, how much to work, when to take a break, and what was actually worth giving his time to. And maybe that's the biggest financial flex of all. So the next time you see an old car on the road, and look at the person driving it, and think, they probably don't have much money. Stop for a second, because that person might actually be far wealthier than the person driving the brand new luxury car beside them. You can't see someone's net worth from their car. You can't see it from their clothes. You can't see it from their phone. You can't even see it from their house. Because the most powerful part of wealth is often invisible. It's sitting inside an investment account. It's sitting inside